Okay, so what I have here is my very first Team Losi Double X vintage two-wheel drive off-road buggy. This is not my first Losi car. I have a Double X4. I made a video on that last fall. And basically when my friend Mark made me the Double X4, that got me thinking about whether I should run all Losi one year at the Vintage Nationals. I have plenty of Kyosho and Yokomo associated stuff to work through over the next few years, but that Double X4 kind of interrupted my plans, essentially. And I thought it would be kind of interesting to try it out. For a long time, I've been putting off getting a Losi car because I just don't have the parts, right? I have a pretty big collection of team associated parts for all my RC10s, but the Losi stuff I got nothing. So I've had to think about whether this is something I want to invest in and really try to build up a cache of spares so that if I do go and actually race something like this, that I can be confident that I'll have enough stuff to get me through an event. But nonetheless, I figured it's a new year and I've spent enough big money on big, expensive vintage cars that I could sort of scale it back down a bit and do something that's a little bit, cheaper in terms of an overall project. So I figured, all right, let's get a Double X, and while we're at it, let's get a Double XT. So then we have a buggy, a truck, and a four-wheel buggy. Why the hell not? So I'm not an expert at the Double X or the Double XT. I will not pretend to be. So I do not quite know if this is the Double X or Double XCR. So I'm just going to go around the chassis so you guys can see it. And if you happen to know better than me, then leave me a comment and let me know which version of the Double X it is. I'm pretty sure it's an original, like the first generation Double X, but I'm not 100% sure. So going around to the front, we have Lunsford turnbuckles. These are very likely aftermarket parts. Losi would not have included those with the kit. We have the older style Losi shocks front and rear, which have the clamp shock collars, so there's no threaded shock body here. Okay. Very interesting to me that the front spindles are hex style instead of bearing style. Like for the RC10s, you have bearings on the front wheels. These are actually hex wheels. I didn't know that. It's kind of a pleasant surprise. The shock tower has how many holes in the front? I think that's 4 holes on the top, and then the inner camber link here you have 4 holes, I believe, right? 1, 2, 3, yeah, I can see it but you can't. 4 holes on the bottom. That's a lot of holes. Again, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom, and then for the spindle carrier, nothing. 4 top, 4 bottom. What did the B2 have? 3 top, 1 bottom. And these had to compete against each other. So if you were a team associated driver competing against this thing with a guy like Brian Kinwald who knew exactly what the hell he was doing, you were in deep shit. He was gonna mop the floor with you on a wider variety of track surfaces. Let's see. We have the white bulkhead here, which I believe that's an original style bulkhead. Steering rack. One thing, actually, question for the audience with the steering rack. I was looking at steering rack parts, and it kind of looks like this steering rack is very similar to that on the Double X4 because of the shape of the bell crank. Please confirm whether or not that is the case. If I can take a Double X4 steering rack and plop it in here. If so, that would be cool because GPM makes an aluminum Double X4 steering rack that I could put in here, and that would avoid me having to spend, let's say, $50 on an original parts tree for an old Double X steering rack. Let's see, the chassis on the bottom, just so you can see what it looks like. I know some of the Losi cars said Team Losi Graphite or whatever. This doesn't have any of that on it. So again, this does lead me to believe it's an original Double X. Again, clamp type collars on the rear. For the dog bones, we have this plastic universal joint here. Those rear hub carriers have a ton of holes. I think there's something like 4 plus a 5th here. And again, the B2 had 1 hole. That's all you had. And then going to the bulkhead, holy shit. You have 4, 8, 9, 10 holes here. This had 2 holes. So you want to talk about tunability, this had it in droves. Although those inner arm mounts look just about as frail as the B2 inner arm mount, so that could be a weak point there. Although the gear cover is on this, let me see if I can just take this off real quick. I'm going to use a 2.5mm driver because that's very close to a 332. That's just what I happen to have on the table here. I believe there's no hydro drive here, it's just a normal slipper clutch. Yep. Normal slipper clutch. Okay. A little bit of bind there. I'm going to have to sort that out. Anyway, that's what this one is. Good to know that JC Racing Products recently released reproduction Double X wheels that are star shaped, so that's really cool. I think I would get a few sets of those because this is the only set of Double X wheels I have, and I prefer to run neon yellow rims. So that's one thing to get. I already bought a couple of parts. I bought RPM front suspension arms. Hopefully that's a good idea because finding front arms for the Double X is very hard, just like finding front arms for the B2. Chances are it will put more stress on the bulkhead though. OldRC.com makes bulkheads. I know you can get 3D printed bulkheads, so these are at least replaceable, the bulkheads. I know that's a weak point on the Double X. I also understand that this top brace here is also a weak point on the Double X. I don't know exactly where it tends to crack, but if I had to guess, maybe it breaks somewhere in here, or maybe somewhere here. That would be a stress point, or maybe here. Not sure, but I'm thinking maybe I can try to fab, like by hand, just like a fiberglass or carbon fiber brace that would sort of go over this to add another layer to make it a little bit stiffer against this kind of forward-backward strain. And if I can make it just right, and I don't know if there'd be a way to wrap it around here, but maybe it would be enough to brace this top brace a little bit more to keep it from breaking. These are very hard to find. You go on eBay, you look for these, people want like $90 for this stupid little part. So if there's a way to reinforce that, I'm very open to suggestions there. I'm thinking just some kind of a plate would do the trick. I did also get, it's not on here, but I did purchase that aluminum rear bulkhead brace, so it mounts on these 2 holes and it kind of wraps around and it goes to the rear bulkhead. I understand that somewhere around here is a weak point, maybe related to how the gearbox mounts onto the bulkhead. Maybe, there's the plastic here brace if you stress it too much. That's my guess. Or maybe just these mounting points here for the tower, these can snap because these ears just kind of come up like this. And if you really put a lot of stress on the tower, I can imagine this plastic, even though it's thick, maybe that'll break. I'm just guessing here because I've only heard about what the weak points are in terms of the parts, but I don't know exactly how they fail. So I'm just guessing. Anyway, this is a very cool car. I've never really had anything against Team Losi. I just didn't really have enough parts to begin with to really chase down vintage Losi projects. But I figure that would be my next goal because I'm I wouldn't say I'm running out of things to do, but I've definitely done a lot of vintage cars, and this would be something new on the list. So here's the Double X. Let's just get out the Double XT real quick so you guys can maybe help me out with which version this is. The front end, obviously, the same platform as the Double X, just with truck parts. This is missing the front body mount. I did get one of those, so that will go on here. Actually, it looks like this piece is what was the body mount, and those little horns broke off. So I'm guessing that that's a weak point for the Double XT. Someone does make 3D printed versions of that, which is nice. Although I am a little worried about using an original replacement. Maybe I can use some other set of parts, like some thicker Kyosho parts, to kind of get the mounting post to a similar position to mount a body, and those would be a little bit stronger. This tower is clearly a lightweight tower, and it's probably fragile if you see how little material is there compared to something like the RC10T2, which is just a fiberglass or carbon fiber plate. It's much more solid. That's a lot stronger. So this is clearly much lighter, but there's also more tunability. So you have 3 holes here on the front bulkhead. The T2 had, I think, 2 holes vertically, and then that was it. Also kind of interesting that the Double X spindle carriers, or spindles rather, are different from the Double XT. I believe also the spindle carriers are different for the Double XT. They're a little bit longer here. But these use just conventional spindles with bearing front wheels, whereas the Double X has hex front rims. That's kind of odd that they would have a differentiation there between the truck and the buggy. Again, one advantage that the RC10s have is the truck and the buggy share the same caster blocks and spindle blocks. These do not. So that's kind of a problem. Same thing here with the bulkhead and the front brace. We went over that. On the rear, what do we have here? Again, standard slipper here, no hydro drive, although it does kind of look like this gear cover is wide enough to accommodate a hydro drive if I ever did want to install that. It looks like the previous owner here maybe broke this turnbuckle and replaced it with just a tie rod that was of the right length. I would like to replace all these with titanium turnbuckles anyway. These steel units kind of suck. So, fine, we'll replace those later. What do we got here? We have, what do they call these? Telescoping drive shafts. These are kind of cool. Traxxas did this as well with their TRX3 and a bunch of their LS2 and God, what was their stadium truck? Their stadium truck version of TRX3. Anyway, interesting that Losi also did this. I was not aware that they had telescoping drive shafts on a version of the Double XT. I know that there is another version that has a conventional diff out drive with a dog bone and a CVD or CVA or some kind of universal joint. So let me know in the comments if this kind of telescoping drive shaft is from the first version of the Double XT or something later. I'm guessing it's for the first generation Double XT. But again, I'm not an expert in the Losi stuff, so let me know. Yeah. So otherwise, this is in pretty good condition. Although some kind of friction there. I will take this apart and try to free it up a little bit. But the whole thing, there's nothing really broken or anything like that. Well, shocks need some oil. So it's a nice truck. I just got to get, I came with a set of wheels. I think the RC10T rims will fit and maintain the correct offsets. I'll have to check that. I have a bunch of RC10T rims, so I can run those on this truck if they do fit in the right way. That'd be really convenient for me. I do have to get a body for this. Penguin RC makes bodies for the Double XT, which is great. And they do a really nice job reproducing things. So these will be 2 projects over the coming year or years, depending on when I can, really work on them and get them ready. And at some point, I would like to run these at the Vintage Nationals. I think that'd be pretty cool. Before I get to that, though, in terms of scheduling for what cars I run at Vonats, I want to really have some success with my Kyosho Pro X first. And then maybe the Kyosho Triumph, maybe break out one of my RC10s to try to. I ran it several times before, the RPM Worlds version of the RC10. I'd like to run that again. So there's other cars I want to run first before I really get to these. So I'm probably going to be something like 45 years old by the time I run these at the Vintage Nationals. But we'll see. Maybe I'll slip it in there somewhere or bring it in for practice or whatever. But I'm kind of excited to, you know, try something new. This should be a fun little journey. And yeah, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching.